purple smoke up in the sky. Pretty soon you'll learn to fly. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. You might go quickly say to me, Mom, you better watch your feet. Lava come down soft and hot. You're loving me now or loving me not. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano comes. Oh, no time to count for what it's worth. 'Cause I just left this planet Earth. Where I go, I hope there's rum. I know there's gonna be a lot on the island tomorrow. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. Well, I don't wanna land in New York City. I wanna land no Mexico. Don't wanna land no 3 Mile Island. Don't wanna see my skin afloat. Don't wanna land Comanche, Skyport, or in Nashville, Tennessee. Don't wanna land no San Juan Airport or the Yukon Territory. Don't wanna land no San Diego. Don't wanna land no Buzzards Bay. Don't wanna land no Iota. I got nothing more to say. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. No, 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 no.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday night. Wes Seiler here with Preserve Navarre Live, and Miss Elizabeth Kurz is in the
Hey.
building. Hi, thank
Hi
you so much
there.
for being here.
Thank you.
We're so excited with this show. So every Thursday night we do this live show out here in Navarre. So looks like people are jumping in now and starting to comment, so we can see every comment that you post, which is so much fun. So it looks like we got Heather is in, Tom is in, we got about a dozen other folks that are in now. So that's so exciting, and especially for what Elizabeth is going to do tonight. She's going to be sharing with us her talent, coaching, all kinds of mentorship, and that's going to be for me. I know I need it. Everybody knows me, knows I could use that, but also helpful for y'all as we go through it. So the interaction that you do, I can post these comments. Looks like Trisha's in as well. Nancy's in. Awesome. So it's going to be helpful for y'all. So feel free to comment. Let me know what you're thinking as we go through this, and especially when we get into the coaching sessions, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so.
Looks like we're off and running. Sound is coming in. Video's coming in. So just a couple things with that. If you can't hear us at any point, let me know. I'm happy to speak up a little bit louder. If the picture comes in a little fuzzy at any time, let me know about that as well. We are now broadcasting on Facebook. We're on YouTube, and we're on Instagram. And we do this show live, but we also release it after the fact, so you can watch the recording at any time. You can share it with your friends, and then I love to do little video clips the next week, so you're going to get all that as we go through it. As Elizabeth knows, we're trying to set this up professionally as we can, but it's a work in progress for us. Thanks to a lot of folks that make this possible, we're starting to get our little routine down, so I always love to give a shout out to them that make it possible. One of them is the Panhandle Shop, so local business owner like yourself. And I see that Tom's on the broadcast as well. So he and Helen run a business where they make these beautiful wooden signs. I've got some in the studio, and they're just gorgeous. And then they dedicate them to different folks who order them, or you can use them for gifts and stuff. So I know as a military family, I'm sure y'all experience this when you move from a different unit and stuff like that. So they make these beautiful going away gifts. So if you're interested in getting something like that, you've got Mother's Day is coming up, Father's Day, stuff like that. It's a great gift to get. Their email is right there, the Panhandle Shop. They're also, I believe, Tom, you'll have to tell me this, but I think you're going to be featured at a couple businesses that are open up, one of them in Pensacola. So you're going to start seeing this stuff around the community even more.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So he's an amazing one that donates to the show. Another one, and you're going to love this too. This is Carmen Reynolds. So she is a retired lieutenant colonel. Yeah, you know
Yes,
Carmen.
I've spoken with Carmen.
She's amazing. So she is putting together an effort that is going to help veterans who find themselves in a tough place. So a lot of times veterans take a lot of service conditions with them when they leave the military. Unfortunately, if they end up in a bad spot where they find themselves having to meet with a judge or getting picked up by the law, a lot of times those service conditions play a role. Not always, but when they do, the Veterans Treatment Court steps in and they say, hey, this person is struggling with maybe PTSD or something like that. Let's get them specific treatment as they, carry out their sentence or whatever. And so they marshal resources specifically for veterans, and then they work on getting them back on their feet, getting them plugged in, because with someone like that, this is a person that at one point was doing a very stressful, tough job. And so we want to get them back into society where they can work another job. So they work with businesses, things like that, and then the law enforcement to say, let's see what this person needs. Really cool.
No, I think that's really wonderful, especially for our community, for sure.
I know. Yeah, there's over 22,000 veterans in our county. And so, between the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, all the different branches, people retire here. We're going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. You know all about that. So what are we doing to those folks that struggle, right? And how do we help them? So what Carmen's doing is setting up a charity that's going to advocate for this treatment court to be set up, because we don't have one right now. Other counties do. Okaloosa, Escambia County, they've got one of these things. We don't have one in Santa Rosa County. And the thought was, well, we don't really need it. The other two counties have it. What about ours? We want people to have that treatment anytime there's any type of veteran that finds themselves in a tough spot. So really cool initiative that Carmen's doing. And then I know you know this one. Yeah. Divergent Spectrum is a new business. One of our mutual friends, Chaz, set this up, Chaz Berger. He was on this broadcast a couple weeks ago. So, and he's been the one helping with the lights and everything, and
Thanks
bringing
for
the Hollywood
me look
magic.
Nice.
Yeah. He's the one who's like, Wes, you got to zoom the camera back. You're right up in front of it. I was like, I don't know. I've never been to Hollywood. He's like, I got it. Right. So he's been helping me with this stuff, but not just me. As you know, he's been helping all businesses. He's very big in the Chamber of Commerce, the young professionals, but he's looking out for any business that needs him out with publicity, with, there he is. Hey.
Yeah.
Chaz is on here.
Chaz is the reason why I'm here now.
Yeah.
He's the reason why I sponsored the Chamber Breakfast last Friday. He's made he's really connected me very quickly with a lot of people. So thank you, Chaz.
Yeah.
And I just think he is really good at what he does. I think anybody would be lucky to hire him and have him. And one thing that I'm really excited about with his type of business is that ours actually complement each other so well.
Yes.
I really do think that, because he does a lot with he goes in with the business and he helps elevate the value of the business, the experience of the customer experience of the business, helps them get out into the community. And I told him, I was like, I think we might actually work well together, because sometimes what I've learned in coaching is that you could give somebody a turnkey business, but if they don't believe they're worthy of having a turnkey business, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because maybe through that process they built some confidence to feel good enough to they can feel like they can have that business, but at the same time there might be some stuff there that we need to work through, and so that's where I can come in and kind of help bolster and backstop.
See, Chaz reminds me that I need to sit up straight.
I know, I'm trying to make him proud.
I went back and I watched our episode and I was like, he has the best posture of anyone I've ever seen. And I'm such a slop compared to that guy. So I'm trying, Chaz. I'm trying to sit up straight like you, man.
We're thinking of you.
So, he's amazing. Love that guy. So, and it's needed in Navarre, because so many military folks, lots of small business owner, very few people have been in the circles that he's been in. And at the same time coming out here, he's somebody who brings his experience, but he also appreciates the local culture of Navarre, right? So a lot of people come from a different area, and then they try to make Navarre different, or they try to change it. He's a guy who's simply trying to enhance it and use it and find his space. And we need it. Local business owners especially, they need the help, because I see mom and pop shops all the time. And yes, they understand marketing and the need for it and all that stuff, but they're the ones that are making the coffee or making the sandwiches or making the flags, right? Having somebody come along, I'll handle the publicity. You don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, sometimes
so valuable. So valuable.
You might get it, but do you want to get it faster?
Yeah, and better, and reach a broader audience. So, love you, man. Thanks for helping out with the show, Chaz, and we'll be talking about him quite a bit as we go through. our future episodes. One of the things that I always do, and you kind of see this already, Elizabeth, is I always love to highlight local heroes. That's what's at the heart of this show, is we set this up because Navarre not being a town or a city, there is no center place, right, where we get together and honor our heroes. We have the Chamber of Commerce that's doing that with the military whenever they have their meetings, but on a day-to-day basis, we wanted to contribute that and honor the people that make Navarre what it is. A lot of people think of Navarre, they think of the beaches, and then they drive through for tourism and stuff like that, but they'll miss the fact that what's at the heart of this community is some really incredible folks, and I love to highlight them. And so Chaz being one of those people, but you yourself as well. You guys are going to see this as we go through the broadcast, as the talent that Elizabeth brings fits right in with these folks. There's Michael Carter playing in the NFL. There's Robert Reyes. I don't know if you've been over to Stripes yet.
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah.
Great restaurant. Yeah, awesome. Listening to his story and how he set that restaurant up and brought his military experience into the commercial sector is just really, really cool. Yeah, Rick Landreth, a war hero. So he was a Ranger as well. So I'm sure your husband knows all about him. But he was in the Black Hawk Down missions that there's been movies about. Right up in Holly. He was raised up around here. Kevin Lucas is another one. He's an entrepreneur who's doing incredible breaking ground medical research and showing new capabilities on the healthcare side. Again, lives in Navarre. He's traveling all the time, but he spent time with us. So you fit right in. It's a community of heroes. It really is. And that's what we love to highlight on the show. So speaking of people who've made a splash and done some important things, we're going to talk about you for a second. And I love to start at the beginning. That's my favorite thing, is because so many people from Navarre have such varied backgrounds. I never know what I'm going to get. This is the first time I've had a state champion gymnast. Two-time state champion gymnast on the show. So by all means, how did this come about? So when did you start doing gymnastics? Where? Fill us in.
Well, I think I started gymnastics as soon as I was capable. I don't know. I think my mom said one day my grandma was like, "Oh, do a cartwheel," and I did a cartwheel. My mom said it was with such wonderful, perfect form that she put me in gymnastics. The next day, I was like 3, I think. Okay. So I do recreation gymnastics, and I start going into meets and competing and team. I think somewhere in around kindergarten, first grade. But it really was when we. We also lived in Fort Campbell area growing up, and then
Kentucky,
we moved.
Right?
Yeah. But then we moved to the southwest corner of Kentucky, where things really took off around 3rd grade when it started getting a little bit more serious. Yeah. And then the newspaper clipping is from whenever I was in 5th grade, and it was the level 8 state championship, and so I won the vault. For the state, so the state champion in vault, I got, I think, 2nd in all around.
That's amazing.
It was a really awesome meet. And then whenever I grew up around in my mid-30s, we were in Fort Bragg, and the gym in North Carolina, they allowed, a lot of gyms don't actually allow adults to, the gyms here won't allow adults to touch any other equipment but the floor, but the one for insurance, because I tried. But the one in North Carolina, they're like, yeah, you can come in, you can compete. So I was like, all right, cool. It had been 22 years since I had touched any equipment. And I went in, and I got some pretty good, a back handspring on beam, and all these items that I never thought I was ever going to do again. And it had been 22 years, did that, competed. They put me in with, I was competing with 9, 10, 11-year-old girls. I will never, fast story, this one little girl, my first meet, I won. Vault was always my event. Yeah. And this girl, I won, and we were lined up where she was standing in front of me. She whipped around. She was like, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 34." And she goes, "Oh." And just kept walking. But then I think, I wonder how the parents feel about this. But in a lot of ways, some of the girls won. Some girls won. Right. I didn't win everything. Right. I only won some things. But what I love about the second one with the state championship is it was, to the day, 23 years, I won. I was state champ in vault for my level that same day. So that was really cool. So same day, 23 years later, still vault
So
state
clearly,
champ.
this was a lifelong passion. That's
Yeah,
what
I mean,
hearing. Okay,
like
got
if we were talking about identity before the show, like
Yeah.
being a gymnast is is an identity for me, and
Yeah.
trying to compete at the best level that I'm possibly capable of doing
Yeah.
is all, that's part of who I am. That's why, I work with high performers
Yeah.
and high achievers, just because it's like it's like a need
Yeah.
and something that we like have to do.
Sure. Well, and then I think about the military component, because you talked about your husband,
Mm-hmm.
active duty military, right? Especially out of North Carolina. I know the base you're talking about, those folks are going out the door all the time. So having something positive to do, right? To
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
kept
like-
your life going.
Because
and
I had
positive.
I had one child at that point, and I was like, I just need something for myself. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just kind of like the one thing that was like only for me.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool. So I've never had a two-time state champion, not one time, let alone two. So that really amazing story. The other one is, I always ask folks when we do this to send me some pictures and stuff, something that folks may not know. I've never had anybody that's been on Shark Tank. I mean, this is amazing. And at first when I saw this picture, I thought you were one of the ladies in pink pitching. But then you told me, no, you're the lady taking a nap.
Yeah.
I was like,
No, I had
but you're
just
still there. You're
I
on
had
the
just
show.
very dramatically collapsed on the bed.
Next time I'm going to have to pull the video clip and we're going to see this live.
I know. Well, I have to preface it by it looks like almost children's torture in a way, but no, it made for. So the ladies pitching are really good friends of mine. They created a product called Slumber Pod, and it was something that they just created from out of a need and necessity. Basically, it's a privacy pod where parents and children can share a room where the children can be in a darkened sleep space.
Okay.
Like you're in a hotel room.
Sure.
So the children can like go to bed and you don't have to turn the lights off, or you can
Oh,
actually
I
like
need that.
you can
Yeah.
actually live like a semi-normal human in a hotel room. And I had I was a raving fan. We connected over it just because I was probably like their number one fan. And
Sure.
then when
brought you along.
it did. Well, they started talking. They were like, "Well, we're gonna go try out for Shark Tank," and I was like, "I will get you coffee. I will pay for my own way. Like, I just have to like be there. Please, please, please. Can I just be there?" And then, fortunately, they were like, "Look, you're like our number one fan. We would love for you and Oscar, my son, to demonstrate the product for us."
Yeah.
And we were like, done.
Right.
I
yeah.
mean, like, don't ask me twice.
Yeah, you get a nap, you get to meet the sharks, right? Like free
Yeah, it
trip.
was
That
really
sounds
cool.
great. So my question is, because my wife and I love watching that show, and just even for like 10 minutes, you pick up on a couple new like products that are coming out. But I always wonder, what are the judges actually like? So which one was your favorite one from like, it's like Mark Cuban and then Mr. Wonderful and all those people?
Like, there that day, let's see, it was Mark, Barbara, Mr. Wonderful,
Yeah.
Lori,
Yeah.
and Robert. So
Okay.
those five
Yeah,
were
yeah.
there that day, and everybody, you don't really get to like talk or interact with them whenever you're setting up. Mr. Wonderful was like standing, so that little rug, the little rug right there,
Right.
it looks really far away from where they're sitting. It's not. It's like 5 feet.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it's so close, and so that's probably one of my more surprising things.
Yeah.
And I know that's really mundane, but
Yeah.
but I think it was Mr. Wonderful like waved at us, and everyone just seems to be everyone was incredibly nice. Just I'm talking everybody like
Yeah.
on the studio set and everybody we interacted with,
Yeah.
and even all the other entrepreneurs that were there. Because of these ladies and because of this experience, some of my clients were on Shark Tank as well.
Oh,
so,
okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's been, and that kind of being introduced with them and working with them got me to be like, because I originally wanted to work with like elite athletes, kind of like that high competitor sort of mindset. But then but I have a business degree, so I was like, this is where it's at. And
Yeah.
so
Value
because of these
creation.
ladies, introducing me and even me meeting a couple people there. Yeah.
That's what I always thought about the show, is like people are getting a chance to showcase their project to the entire world. So they're already winning at that point, just going on the show, right? So they're already doing them like, an act of charity at that. So I tend to think that a little bit nicer than the whole like shark thing, but I'm sure there was a lot of pressure, getting up there for them.
It's a pressure. I was nervous. I mean, it's a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Like everybody, I mean, people are really nervous. I think everyone has a lot of fun. They try to make it like you're just really at ease. They try to make you feel comfortable or help you feel comfortable. So, But yeah, it was a fun time.
Very cool. So done a whole lot of stuff, traveled all over the country, and then you bring your talents here. So this is Elizabeth over at the Chamber doing one of the events that you had. I think you just recently were up there. Yeah, very good. So, but kind of backing up before that, how did you and your family end up here? What was the story for that brought y'all to Florida?
Well, we were, my husband's in the Army. We were at Fort Bragg. I did not want to leave the area that we were in. I didn't want to leave the house we were in. I just loved it so much. I loved the community. And again, it was we were not in Fayetteville. We were in a Southern Pines, Aberdeen area. And whenever he got orders to come here, I'm not gonna lie, I was very sad. Yeah. But you know, it took me some time, and I was like, all right, well, we're moving to the beach, and we basically won the lottery for a Army PCS. I was gonna say, in my personal opinion, I think it's winning the lottery. There's a whole lot
of other people from North Carolina that probably would have taken that job. You know what I'm saying?
I know. I just, you know, it was like I was leaving gymnastics. I was leaving.
Right.
I think that was one of the harder things. Like gymnastics, just, you know, when you're a military spouse or just military in general, and the restarting over and over and over again. It's
extremely difficult.
Yeah, and it was like, gosh, I finally like created something, and now we have to leave it again. It was a little sad, but then obviously we come here and it's like, okay, I can do that again here. I think
the roots and everything else. Yeah, so I totally relate because my wife was military. She had been in for 6 years. I had been in the same amount of time, and then she starts making the decision, hey, I want to go out and get into the ministry. We get orders down here. We pick up. We had been here for 3 years, and we didn't want to leave. You know, I get orders to D.C., and we're like, no. Like, kids are in school. Church is great. Getting into the community, just falling in love with Navarre. You could do a whole lot worse, right? And so we switched out.
You could do DC.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was during COVID too, because it was like everything was shut down up there. My brother lives up in Virginia, and he was like, "Dude, you don't want to come up here." He's like, "We want to come down there and live with you, right?"
No, I've already lived. My mom's from DC area. I lived in DC for years.
Yeah.
No.
So much happier here. So and family. I mean, that's so much of what it's about is taking care of your family, making sure that they're, you know, planted, connected, and all that stuff. So that's a great picture. So how recent is this?
This was just in like September,
okay,
October.
So less than a year. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was just in the fall.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. So y'all are planted down here, and he's recently retired. Is that right? So
he retired
that's awesome.
last summer.
Living a retired life. That's great.
He doesn't
I'm
care
jealous.
for the humidity, but I like it. Navarre reminds me a lot of where I grew up. I grew up in a really small town, and so Navarre is a lot.
Small town feel.
It's. I don't know. I even wrote on the Chamber at the breakfast. I wrote a letter on my handout, and I just was like, "This is of all of the places I have left or lived since leaving home. Like this is the first place that feels like home."
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Since leaving home,
it does that absolutely, and that was part of the draw for us. Is my wife wasn't from the South, so I was introducing her to everything, and I was like, we want to keep some of that like Southern culture and especially the small town feel, and that's when we picked out Navarre over Destin and several other places. I was like, this still has it. We want to preserve that. So totally agree with you there. But so you know, you're in Florida. You know, husband's planted. He's doing his job. Kids are growing up, and then you start forming your business and a big part of your calling. So tell me about these guys. Who are these gentlemen, and how did you come to meet them?
So these guys are the two that founded our certification school. Mark is on the left. He's actually my personal coach. I've been working with him for over a year now.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. And then Josh is on the right. He's the founder of the school. And then the two of them came together to create the curriculum because they also have a really interesting background, at least within the coach world. Like, have you heard of John Maxwell?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So Josh on the right trained under John Maxwell's certification program.
Yeah.
So we have, we kind of learned both a John Maxwell style of coaching, and then Mark on the left trained underneath a woman by the name of Brooke Castillo, and her, it's called the Life Coach School, and hers is like true life coaching, which is a little different than what we do. But they married the two, and it's just, I don't know, it's just, I just love it so much. So yeah, so we learned from both. They both are fantastic. Mark is a former LAPD sergeant. He was a detective in the gang unit out in out in LA. So he's got some
stories, I'm sure.
He retired way early in order to do this full time, and Josh had like detailed cars, but he has this excellent intuition and can just really coach people understand like what they're experiencing before the other person even realizes what they're experiencing.
Very cool.
Yeah. So,
And that kind of shows what's behind what you're doing, is that there is a science to it. There's other folks who have derived it and shaped it and all, and now you're putting your own spin on it a little bit, right? So
yeah, or at least maybe I'm learning from the best. I have a third mentor. Her name is Tina. I don't know if she's watching tonight, but she also she learned with them.
Yeah.
And so, but she's a little bit more advanced than I am, but I get to learn with her style as well, and just learning from all of these different styles and getting to bring them into whatever it is I'm doing. I don't know. It's great. I can only hope to be as great as any one of these three.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to, you were talking about Shark Tank and how the different entrepreneurs were talking and encouraging each other, right? That camaraderie is big. I can relate to that because, doing this type of stuff, like I already talked about Chaz helping me out with just like the show, but our nonprofit, I mean, there are several other nonprofits in the area, obviously, and anytime they want to like give me feedback or trade tactics and stuff like that, I don't know if non-military people call it tactics, but like anytime they want to give me tips and guidance, I'll take it, And then anytime I see somebody else, there's numerous other people that are doing kind of live shows and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, did you know I figured out how to do this with this program? Always trying to help, right? Because you build that network and then you refer other people and all that stuff. So that just makes the community and your work life even better, right? So
yeah.
A lot of fun. So so we're going to get into some of the techniques and things like that. One of the big ones that I know you're going to talk about is the nature of the subconscious, right? So you're going to have to define what that is, because I'm not entirely sure. Like, I've got ideas on it, but this was a graph and I've been like studying it for like the past 2 days. I'm not sure I can follow it all, but by all means help me out here, because as you get into the science behind your coaching, I think we'd all like to better understand where that's coming from.
Sure. Well, so this graph, I just really want to highlight. I did not create this. Josh created this as a really, I guess, a visual way to understand, okay, what occurs when we, kind of just how we operate as human beings. And so I'm wondering, so I brought like a little mini workshop today, and I'm wondering if maybe we could dive into that.
So we've got about 15, 16 people that are watching live, which is perfect. So you guys feel free to comment on here and give me feedback. If you have clues, I will gladly take them as we answer this stuff, because I'm looking forward to it. I know I need it, like I said. So by all means, dive in.
Yeah, because I could talk about myself all day, but the entire foundation of what I do is trying to make a transformative impact. And so this is, coaching is a very vast world. It's a process. But I always like to deliver value wherever I can. And so this is a way to maybe hopefully teach somebody like a small portion of coaching today. Hopefully they have like a couple aha moments, and then there's some actionable tips that you can take away today to kind of get started. Because I say what I do is I help rewire your subconscious mind so you can unleash your business brilliance.
Right. And one of the things that I had asked you when we first started setting up the show was, how do we find optimism? Because you look at the news cycle today, nationally especially, and it's just very depressing a lot of times, right? You just see people fighting and arguing, and especially military, you see war in the Middle East again, and there's a lot of reasons to be either dismayed or scared or uncertain about the future. How do we derive positivity and cultivate that in ourselves and our business and with our friends? So I'm excited for the answer.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, maybe it's a simple answer, like out of sight, out of mind. So you want to stay informed, but it's like there's a place where it's like a healthy bit of information. Maybe have a feeling about it, but really be like. What we're going to talk about today is kind of conscious thinking and subconscious thinking, and how both
go for it.
Kind of influence. So first I want to really kick off, and please, people, those of you watching at home, first of all, thank you for joining us today. But second, please feel free to type in the chat, like answer any question that I have, because this really works best as kind of an interactive sort of a workshop. So there's no wrong answers here. There's no reason to feel silly, or no one's here to judge anybody, at least not in my realm. So yes, so please feel free to participate. So I really want to open it up. A lot of business owners, we don't, especially high performers and achievers, we do not give ourselves enough credit we usually achieve something or we complete a task and we move on to the next thing. So I really want to open this up by first asking everyone tonight, like over the last week or the last 5 days, what are you most proud of accomplishing in your business or even in your life this past week?
So, yeah, while people are typing and thinking about that, I think for me in the past week, it's been starting to hit a routine with like doing this show. That's been a big one. Is we've got like obviously you spending time with us, and then we've started to hit a routine with the next 2 or 3 folks. We already have that planned out, so now I don't have to stress like who's gonna be on the show next week. Like we're starting to get our process down. That's
that's pretty huge.
That's my answer.
That's a great accomplishment. If like anybody else want to share? If not, like I'll dive right in. So so I have notes here, so y'all are going to see me kind of touch base on them. All right, so mindset. So really the title of this is like, why is it so hard to keep a positive mindset? And mindset is a really hot word. It's a super hot word, and I really have to ask, like, everybody has their own definition of it. So like, what does mindset mean to you?
Yeah. So mindset for me is I think of interpretation and framing, right? So what I mean by that is you have the things that happen, the reality that's out there, and then how is that received? Like, how do you receive that, So a red light happens, right? It's green, it changes to red. That could be just another red light, or it could be the one that makes you late, and then all of a sudden, like, you're really upset. Your mindset affects a lot of what that, action means.
Yeah, I think like what I hear you saying is kind of like in the moment. Like your mindset is like what you're experiencing in the moment, what you're thinking in the moment.
How it's received, yeah.
Yeah. So and then also another thing that I would love to ask is why do you think it's so hard to keep a positive mindset?
Well, you already kind of hinted at it, but I love. There's a documentary called The Social Dilemma that talks about just how much information we're saturated with, and the real challenge to me is because if it's like a scary story, it just gets more clicks, right? Like just the way we're built, we tend to react based off of fear first and early, and the media knows this, and so they're just like, oh my gosh, like Trump's going down on a trial, or like Iran is firing rockets into Israel. People are going to click on that story versus a positive one talking about someone doing great work in the community, and so the negative stories rise to the top. And we're saturated with them all day. Like that's my theory.
You set me up so
okay.
well because what I wanted to say, I've been having a lot of these conversations lately with my with clients and with others, and it's really around the topic of mindset. And so many of them struggle thinking that mindset is how you feel in the moment.
Okay.
Just like what you were saying. So it's how you think in the moment, how you feel in the moment. So it's your state of mind at this moment. But interestingly enough, if you're just reacting to how you consciously feel or think, then the outside world is literally controlling your mindset.
It feels that way. Yeah, it feels that way a lot. It's like starting off with a good day or whatever. I get the kids their cereal. Like wife is getting up and getting ready to go to work and all that stuff. And then you look at your phone. And now it's just like, like it's going to be rough, because this is what we're going to be talking about at work and or we're going to send people overseas, and all of a sudden, like the fire is like gone, by the time it's 8 a.m.,
Exactly. So if we're thinking about mindset and having it's so hard to keep a positive mindset because we're reacting with how you're describing it. We're reacting to our outside world. It's controlling us.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do as a life and performance coach, it's one of the differentiators of what I do is that I help get in there and retrain your mindset. And we do that, what I mentioned earlier, by rewiring and reprogramming your subconscious mind so that you are in control and not your outside world.
Okay.
So this is how we control ourselves. This is how we achieve our goals. Yeah. This is how we make empowering decisions. And this is how we stay positive because we are controlling our mindset through our subconscious instead of reacting to the outside world with our conscious mind.
Yeah, and we had talked about this a little bit too when we were first setting up, is I think a lot of times we make decisions based on emotion, not necessarily upon like our mind, like not upon like reason, right? Like we tend to think that like, well, I made a logical conclusion, right? But like my wife tells me all the time, you did not. You made a dumb one because you were emotional and reactive. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably true, right? Like, especially with kids, it's just like, and then I have to say, I'm sorry. I think most of our decisions seem like they come from like just impulsive reactions. And then we just kind of figure out ways to like rationalize it later on. At least maybe that's just me. I don't know.
No, I think there's some truth to that. Or, there's some, I think a lot of people can probably connect with that reasoning too. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Okay.
Right, is what we're saying. And so I just really want to give you guys an example really quick.
Please.
It's kind of like I'm going to call it an off the wall, but not so much. So I just want to, so someone that you really care about or respect wants to write and publish a book.
Mm-hmm. They
come to you for advice.
Okay.
What are you going, sorry, let me back up. They want to write and publish a book, and they have a really empowering, they know they have a really empowering and positive message to share.
Yeah.
But they feel hesitant or nervous about it for some reason, so they're going to come to you advice about what they should do. Like,
okay.
What are you going to tell them?
Encourage them, especially if it's a powerful story. Like if I can kind of meet them where they're at or catch the vibe from it and be like, oh, that's a story people need to hear. We had Skip Orth on here, who owns one of the local businesses. He's also an author. And like just having him sit here and talk about the books that he's on, like, hey, Skip did it, you can do it too, is probably what I've said because I've seen people succeed at it.
Yeah, like, so you would encourage them. Would you give them any other like advice, like anything that they should do?
Probably going back to like sharing tactics. You talked about how like success breeds success. If we share, I'd be like, hey, here's Skip's number, call him, figure out how he published his book. I don't know how he did it, like, but he wrote it down and like it's on paper now, so he must have done something right. So talk to him.
Again, you were really setting
good.
me. You're
right.
setting me up good. No, all right. So
I'm being taught.
Yeah. So let me share. So they listen to your advice and your encouragement, and now it's 2 months later.
Okay.
And they haven't written one page of their book, or maybe they've written like a subpar 10 pages.
Yeah.
And some people still might complete it, but in this case, like ultimately, it's just the completion of the book is looking a little bleak.
Okay.
So, out of curiosity, like, why do you think that is?
Why would someone not do it at that point? Well, there's always life, right? Like that for me is like I'll have so many things that I want to do, right, with our nonprofit or this, that, and the other, or like, hey, let's take the kids camping, and then like the day-to-day gets in the way of just like you got dishes to clean, you got clothes to wash, you got a job to do, and then these grand ideas or empowered ideas get put to the wayside for like the day-to-day necessities. So I would assume that about a person if they didn't get into it. I mean, maybe they're lazy, but I don't know many lazy people.
There could be some of those, what we say, facts. Like there might be items that have to get taken care of.
Self-doubt is something that Carrie wrote. She said maybe somebody, had this. Yeah, they had this agenda, they had this passion, they were going to do it, but then they doubted themselves. That can definitely happen too.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was going to share that, or a little bit of that in a moment, like, because I was going to tell you, so what's actually happening is that while you might have cheered them on, given them some really good tips, because it's not, having them go to Skip and see what he did, you would have done all of this for their conscious brain. And their subconscious mind was running the show the entire time. Yeah. And it still is. And so what I mean by that is, when your friend so you gave them some advice 2 months ago. Yeah. A couple times through there, they're like, all right, I remember what Wes told me. Yeah. I remember what Skip told me. Like, I'm going to go sit down and write this book. They go sit down and to write a couple pages, and then they all of a sudden have these conscious thoughts similar to, what would people think of me if I did this? Who am I to write this book? I don't have anything interesting to say. Why would anybody read this? Like things that's kind of streaming. That's streaming in the background. So like these are thoughts that are really just deeper limiting beliefs that are stored in their subconscious that they can't even verbalize because they don't even consciously know that they exist.
Well, and that's like, I think that's keying in onto a huge part of human nature is we tend to like think about loss first, right? Like we don't always think about what we can gain from something. Just self-preservation, we think about what am I going to lose, right? What's the liability and risk?
Exactly. Tina, the mentor coach that I shared earlier, we just had a training in this like 2 weeks ago, and it's like we measure loss we think of loss because we can actually measure it. It's concrete. Our brain likes to know certainty. and it's really difficult for our brain to know
Yeah.
uncertainty. We don't like uncertainty.
Well, I deal with this all the time because one of the things that our nonprofit is doing is we're like putting the plans together for what a town would look like if Navarre was a city, and it always goes to one conversation, which is loss, which is how much am I going to pay taxes? And I'm like, here it is. Can we talk about the things that the city's going to bring, infrastructure this, and stormwater mitigation that? They're just going to be able to like help us control tourism. They don't want to talk about any of that. They want to talk about what's it going to cost me? What am I going to lose? Like it's always the negative, and it just stays there the entire conversation, and it never gets to any of the fun stuff or what we're trying to build.
Might be able to give you 2 questions later on that you could start
Please.
applying and turn it back on people to start asking them. Asking them these. So I'm going to share those in a moment, which I think could be really they're going to be powerful for you. So so to wrap up this little example is that with this friend that these thoughts they don't even consciously know that these things, that these subconscious beliefs exist, so therefore they're not going to feel inspired, and they will never take the action to write or publish the book, no matter how much advice or uplifting words of encouragement you provide for them. So in a nutshell, that's why it's so hard to keep a positive mindset.
Yeah, and so what you're doing is you're kind of digging below, like the conscious thoughts that we have, like what we're thinking day to day.
Temporary on there.
Yeah, like you're getting down to things that are like below the surface. We may not even be aware that we're feeling, like blocks that we can't even really express well explicitly.
Exactly, and that's why having a coach like me, because I'm listening to you speak, I'm starting to ask you questions to explore based on what you're sharing with me that are going to make you think from a new perspective, to be like, oh, I never actually thought about that.
Interesting. Okay.
So we think we need to fix our conscious thoughts in the moment, when actually we just really need to reprogram our subconscious mind instead. And so now everyone's like, all right, well, how do we do this? Okay. So first, like I said, this is why you need to hire me. And then second, so I'm going to share something that you can implement today, but it's not, I want to make sure that you guys know this is not a one size fits all solution, but it is a starting point. So for example, with the book example, your friend had this desire to write a book. We want to tap into their potential and impact of actually following through on it. So a question that we can ask them is, what about publishing and writing this book is so important and meaningful to you?
Okay, so you're starting to access the optimism again. You're starting to go to like goal completion and what you're going to get from it.
Josh created what we call our head voice, which is all these like negative thoughts, these fears, this scarcity. And so that is what drives a lot of our day-to-day, because that's really, what's embedded in the subconscious. And it's our head voice. It just keeps us safe. It's our brain.
Self-preservation.
It's our brain just operating how it's supposed to. But these questions tap into what Josh coined as the heart voice. This is where your purpose, your passion, your potential, these things that your heart knows, like this is where we need to go. So we ask this kind of question, and there's another question that kind of goes a little step deeper, which is, what significance will writing and publishing this book have on your life and the lives of those that are going to read it? So you're really forcing them to get outside of their own head and thoughts to be like, God, one, why is this important and meaningful to me? Like truly, because you can really be like, oh wow, it's important for these reasons. And then like, what significance or impact is that gonna make on you, maybe on your family, on those of like the people reading it? Like if you could really just dream and be like, oh, your message is so powerful, what impact is that gonna make for
really
them?
Interesting. Yeah, so it makes me think, and this is just kind of like my political mind, but it makes me think of 2 massive movements in America. One would be the Revolutionary War, because at that point, enormous potential for loss, right? Trying to galvanize America to stand up to the biggest empire of the day. How did they break through that fear? Well, there's a lot of reason to be afraid. Like British are coming, they're going to gun you down, the whole Boston Massacre, the whole thing. And yet our country moved beyond fear, and it found passion, the potential for a better future. I'm thinking of like Thomas Paine and the books that he wrote that inspired people. So I think of that movement and how people accessed optimism in the face of fear. And then I think of the civil rights movement. That's a big one. And Martin Luther King, and how people were literally standing up to police while they were getting like, hoses aimed at them and shot at them and getting thrown off buses and beaten up and everything else. And yet Martin Luther King tapped into the dream and all of that of fulfilling the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights and all of that. And people stood up, and they were so bold and said, I'm not going to be afraid. And I look at our country today, and it's like, how do we access that, right? Like,
yeah.
how do we stand up and say, you know what, we can overcome the stuff. We're the country that did those things. And so I wonder, you know, in those movements, what was happening at the subconscious level that led people to say, let's do it, you know,
Yeah.
like we're going to make this a better place.
I think a word that came to mind as you were sharing that is like conviction. And, you know, that's why we call it your heart voice, because your heart, like, I always say, like, you know, when they say, like, follow your heart, like, your heart just kind of, it just knows the way because you just feel it just deep down in your soul. Like this, like, we all have it. We just know it. Like, we can all access different parts of our life when we actually really leaned into that and chose that and believed in that. Like, we all, and so sometimes if you're like if you're currently having a struggle, we sometimes think about, okay, well, where do we have past evidence that this actually occurred? And so we'll take you back to that moment, like, describe that moment. What was that like? What are some of the things you did? Like, if you can remember any of the thoughts you were having, like, what about that moment was so important and meaningful to you, and you can pick out little pieces and you're like, okay, what about applying that to right now? Like, to this kind of a thing.
Right. Well, I think of, my first thought is like social media is the devil. I think of like comment wars on Facebook is not the freaking answer, right? Like, because sometimes information technology and all that stuff can be a benefit. Like, it's allowing us to do this show and all that stuff. That's really cool. But so many times it devolves, right? And then there's like fake profiles and this, that, and the other. And then people get their news from social media and everybody's got their own version of it. And we just end up fighting. And I don't think that conviction is transferred through logical arguments and, you know, rationality this, because you can rationalize anything. So I think of trying to get people back to face-to-face conversations, right? Where passion and conviction can actually be like spread, you know, and transferred.
And I think obviously as well, like, when you can see facial expressions, you can hear tone of voice, you can see body language, like, that's really important with all of this. With all of that too.
And then also getting people off the defensive, right? Like, hearing them out, cool. Okay, I'm going to express some thoughts, and I'm going to tell you where my passion comes from, not contradict your facts. You know, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to argue numbers. When I get into like a numbers debate with somebody, it never goes well, even if I'm right. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, if we're like 4.3% this and 10% that, like, it doesn't matter. No one's changing their mind. But if we can communicate, hey, this is what compels me, this is my conviction, it's more of a testimony, getting, like you said, to that heart, you know, mind, part of the mindset as opposed to the logic.
Well, and what we say in coaching is that we can't coach people that aren't in the room, but also you can't control how they're going to receive your information. And so if for whatever reason at times, like, if that's something that kind of like stirs you up in a certain way, it's almost like, is this my brain trying to distract me from like what I'm actually out here trying to do?
Right.
And that's a question you can ask too, because your brain is going to look for those distractions to pull you away from your mission and your purpose.
That's right. Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, okay, I need to access and tap into what is it? Where are those people? Because those are the people that I need to find and speak with, and you'll be able to through messaging, which I forgot to mention. Josh is a master at messaging, sales marketing messaging, because I mean, in a lot of times, like, you kind of have to like sell people into whatever it is for them to hear, to do, and there's definitely a way to communicate that with them in order to address your message for the people that need to hear it, who will hear it. Because there's definitely going to be people that aren't going to hear it.
Sure.
But do you want to pay attention to those people?
Well, everybody's different. There's some people that are definitely going to change. There's some, we talk about the whole city stuff. There's some people that are just like, am I going to get better services for my kid? Yes. Cool. Good. Right? Like, are we going to get more parks? Yes. Cool. Great. Like, then there are people that are like, on page 75 of your feasibility study, like, I found a period that was misplaced and now I don't trust anything you're saying. Right? So everybody's different in terms of like what their criteria is, and being able to meet them where they're at with kindness, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. I think that's a lot of it too. Like sometimes we just have to meet people where they're at, and wherever that
trust.
is, like we can't control that, but we can control what we want to say, how we want to behave, the emotions that we want to express through, the words of conviction that we want to use with our message.
Carrie had a really good comment. She said, subconsciously running away from the unknown. Like, sorry, I hear my daughter watching Elsa, in Frozen and stuff, like summoning the courage to go into the unknown. It's a thing. People are definitely scared of a future. I hear that all the time. What guarantees are you going to give me about this, that, or the other, right? There's no guarantee we're going to have tomorrow. I think we will, but like, that's faith, right? So it's hard to live based upon unknowns. Yeah, and that can lead to a lot of fear.
Yeah, and it really is like what I had shared earlier, like when we can control, because we can't control anything but ourselves.
Yeah.
And how we receive information, how we interpret information, and there's always two paths. We have the head voice path, and we have the heart voice path, and it really is just like, okay, which one do I want to lean into? But sometimes we need to be aware of what's there. We need to be able to access it, and sometimes it's difficult to do. Nobody can live inside their own brain. Sometimes we just have to. Last night I was talking to somebody. It's almost like our brain is just like this box of puzzle pieces, and even just having a coach, it's like it's somebody to talk to dump out all the puzzle pieces, like to just get it all out. And then from that point, we're able to put the puzzle pieces back together because it's not in this jumbled mess in our brain. We get it out, and we're able to kind of piece it back together again where it makes sense.
So I guess my question is going back to the example you brought up of the person with the book, right? They want to write it. You start dialing in to the conviction, right? You start dialing in.
Well, we would first, like in this example, we skipped over a couple steps. Like first, what we would do is that we would bring awareness. Okay. What are some of these limiting beliefs? We would want to zoom in on a really specific moment that this took place so they can kind of be aware of the pattern. Like the little stick figure there, that really is what that is just a pattern of behavior that we ultimately start going into that's driven by our subconscious. And this subconscious it's like our default, the way that we default, like how we operate by default.
Yeah.
And so that creates a pattern. Over time, this pattern is going to create a specific amount of results for us. So we kind of want to start being aware of like maybe some of the triggers, like what's actually taking place here, like letting them know, making them aware of, okay, if we keep going down this path, like these are the results that are going to get created. Like, how is that serving you? Why are you choosing to continue to do this? Because we all we choose it for some reason. It's keeping us safe.
Yeah.
And then once we kind of, when the person is ready, and I do tester questions where we can figure out like, okay, are we ready to kind of move into, all right, we can access this new place. This is also a choice that you have. And this is what, like, we can help build, like, all right, what do they actually want to achieve and dream? And I call it like the potential and possibility of what they actually want to do from their heart voice.
Do you unmask some of the fear? Do you really go into, because that's what I was thinking of. This person wants to write a book. They're nervous about failure. Would you ever play that out? Like, okay, let's say that you write this book and people don't read as much as you thought. Okay, right? Like, I'm sure that has happened to many an author before. Like, it's not the end of the world, right? Like,
yeah, like we can
maybe
play,
you learn something from it.
Yeah, we can do like worst case scenario type stuff.
Okay.
And Tina, who I was talking about earlier, she taught us something called WAR. What's at risk?
Yeah.
So she calls it running it through this model of what's at risk. And it's like, okay, what's at risk if you don't write the book?
Yeah.
What's at risk if you do write the book?
Yeah.
And it's almost like you can kind of compare notes.
Yeah.
And be like, so you can really just get it out and see it and be like,
Very cool. Very cool. I know. I love it. So much of what I'm getting, and I really appreciate the time and working through this, is what I think at least this is how I receive it, is a lot of times in life, I've known people, I myself have gotten like medical counseling because I've been wrestling with something very, very difficult, right? But at the same time, there's a place in life, even if things are going well, to have someone kind of look at the nuts and bolts as to why you're doing what you're doing, just to get you to reflect a little bit more, right? To access some of like the deeper reasoning, like you said, the subconscious. We can all use that, whether we're selling ice cream in Navarre or working in the military. We can all use some of those little checks, even if we're perfectly healthy, just to say, hey, let me be more self-aware, right? It seems like that's what you're bringing about.
Yeah, like a lot of it really comes down to a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah,
with
it's cool.
like how is your subconscious mind and all of these things that we've collected over the course of our lifetime that are our default ways of operating and being, like how is this impacting our current way of life, how it's impacting our future? Because a lot of the people I work with, we don't like to set, like, we have really big things that we want to do, but we also are just like everybody else in okay, like I've got to get past these regular fears that I have.
Yeah, so I think about one of the things that I share a lot of times with the whole like incorporating Navarre thing is when I get to a place with a person where I can kind of share my heart. I talked about growing up in Memphis a little bit with you before we went live. We lived on the outside of Memphis in an unincorporated area called Cordova. And because it was unincorporated, the city of Memphis, which was obviously a much bigger area, took it over, including its school system, right? They annexed it and they took it over. And I remember my dad explaining it to me when I was a kid. He was like, well, we weren't our own town, so we really couldn't stand up to Memphis when they took us over and told us what to do. And then people left. A bunch of my friends left where we lived, and I was very sad about that. And that still is a huge part of why I see, because I see Navarre now and, generating a lot of tourism revenue and taxes and all this stuff. And then I see the big county kind of making the decisions, and I still feel some of that stuff from my childhood. Man, we should incorporate so that we have our own self, decision making. When I explain that to people, I'm sharing my heart, my convictions,
exactly,
and the impetus behind what I'm doing. They're like, "Whoa, so you're not a socialist at all, right?" Like, that actually makes a lot of sense,
right? That's your purpose, and that's like your deeper purpose,
mindset,
and even in some ways like an explanation as to why you want to do this. But because you're also coming from a place of like understanding, maybe a little based empathy probably for your younger self of what you maybe experienced when you were little, and so you're bringing all of that here, and you're able to speak from your heart from that.
And then for you, like just what I picked up from doing this show, thinking about like being this gymnast who was extremely good at what you did, having to pick up, your family and then plant here. It's really cool to see you live into your passion, right? Like finding your place. Let me see if I've got the picture here.
An incredibly speckled career path, and this is probably the one thing that I feel so passionately about it. And
but like getting connected, having
these guys
relationships.
I mean,
right?
Thank goodness for Josh for even having the his own conviction of being like, I am going to figure out how to do this, and I am going to teach everybody I can because it's so important. And because it transforms your life.
Yeah, 'cause I think about what you said before of like the same Elizabeth who was leaving North Carolina and was sad and like, getting uprooted and all that stuff. Look at you now, right? Like
I know, like I never thought I'd be like, I gave another little mini workshop on Friday, the art of asking powerful questions, another area of coaching.
So cool for you as well, right? To see you living into that conviction of, hey, I want to be planted, I want my family to be happy, and now you're living that out, right? Like, so it's pretty clear to me. So really cool stuff. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I got a lot out of that. That was amazing, and it's very clear why so many people do, why it's so captivating to so many businesses in Navarre. So this is her business, right? So people, I think you get their website on there. I was looking at that yesterday, kurzcoaching.com. That's where they can fill out stuff. And
if you go to kurzcoaching.com, it'll just, land on the page. But, I provided, like, if you are interested in having a call with me or working with me or exploring that option, it's kurzcoaching.com/apply. And it takes you to some questions that you can fill out so we can really get an idea of what we can do together.
It's like doing an oil check and a tune-up for your business, for your nonprofit.
It doesn't only impact your business. This is something that truly flows into your life. It flows into your relationships. It flows into your family, your kids. I mean, everything that we learn is it's so powerful. It's honestly, I find it difficult to express because it's so life-changing. Like one of my clients is just, wow, if you saw her 7 months ago till today, everything about her is just, it's crazy.
Yeah, I wanted to share something because it just, this is kind of my last thought here, because it inspired me so much kind of looking at your website and thinking about this, because I had one of those self-awareness types moments. This was more a medical counselor, But when I was coming home from I was coming home from Afghanistan, I had a lot of anxiety and panic and all that stuff. I didn't deal with it overseas, but I got home, and after about 3 or 4 months of being home, all of a sudden, all those emotions that I had suppressed started coming out. I was like, what is going on? I was a young lieutenant in the military and didn't know I was dealing with this stuff. And I had someone do that for me as they kind of opened up the hood and they said, what are you feeling and why? What's your mindset? And my mindset at the time was purely reactive, like you were talking about at the beginning. It was purely like anxiety is consuming me. And I wrote this down before we started because I remember feeling that way of just I'm being consumed. And that person helped me kind of think about, well, how did this come about? Why did you get here? What actions did you take? And led me to a place where I reframed that to, no, I'm dealing with anxiety as a result of my actions of going overseas and working so hard for the military and seeing what I saw and participating in what I did. And that second thought of reframing that, of being more self-aware as to what I was dealing with, getting less reactive, put me back in the driver's seat.
Exactly.
You know, and
Yeah.
it gave me a sense of control that has helped me in my life. Honestly, it saved my life because I said, okay, if I'm dealing with this anxiety as a result of my actions, well, maybe I'll pace myself better. Maybe I'll think a little bit more about what I'm doing and not challenge myself quite so hard next time and be a more effective leader as a result of that. So I think whether it's heavy stuff like this, whether it's a business, I mean, my relationships changed out of this because I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I'm the same way with my wife and stuff is we think about things with a little bit more self-awareness than we did when we were younger. As we think, hey, we want to go on this vacation, but you know what? That's going to be a whole lot more than probably what we can take on right now. Let's set that aside for now and do something a little bit more simple. Let's make it easier on ourselves. Let's try to think more about, hey, we can still fulfill the passion of getting our family together down the street as opposed to like, you know, thousands of miles away because that's where our budget is right now or whatever it is, right? Just,
Yeah,
we can all use that.
Because you're thinking about, okay, like, why is this important and meaningful
So
to me?
good.
Like, you can always
Yeah.
run it through those two questions because they're so powerful. If
Yeah.
you need to just be like, all right, sometimes we need to figure out what's there because
Yeah.
that's going to keep coming up unless we get some awareness of it. But
Yeah.
we want to move forward. Like, nobody wants to just sit here, but nobody wants to sit in this place. We all have goals and dreams that we want to do, and
Yeah.
sometimes we need a little help in
Yeah.
order to get there.
But exactly. I'm 100% in support of what you're doing because how hard is that conversation by yourself? I never would have gotten there without support and a counselor, right? So being able to draw that out of people, be a sounding board for them, and to ask those right questions, you know, that get to the heart of the convictions. Very cool. Very cool to see you capable of doing that. And I can't wait to see, and I'm sure it's already happening, just the string of successes and testimonies. I know you've had a couple already. But being able to talk about that. So please, I would love for you to come back on the show anytime.
Oh, man,
I would
thanks.
love to get some of your clients on here to talk about their successes, what they've had. I do want to go through the comments real quick before we wrap up here and make sure I caught everybody. I know we had Tom, Heather, Nancy, Trisha was on here as well. Appreciate that. Chaz, as we talked about, he was on here. He thought about it sounds like y'all have had some interactions.
Yeah, we had
before.
a little coach call last week.
Oh, good. That's awesome. That's great. And then, of course, Carrie, really appreciate all of your comments. So I think I hit everybody
you
up.
guys.
If I did not get to your comment, just send me a message. I'll be happy to forward that to Elizabeth. Again, take a look at her website that we've shown on here. If you need any help contacting her, just let me know. We'll forward it right along. But love to have you on again. But thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
This
Thank
was
you.
wonderful. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for having
absolutely.
me. And thank you guys for joining us.
Y'all have a great night. Be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and you can also look at our website as well, preservativeart.com. Y'all have a great night. We'll see you next week. Bye.